Former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo announces he is joining the presidential race, pledging for constitutional reform aimed at a major change in power structure. Meanwhile, the DP's presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung continued campaigning, today in Gangwon, amid renewed legal risk, while the PPP's hopefuls Kim Moon-soo and Han Dong-hoon were busy making their final pitches ahead of the weekend's party convention. The country witnessed confusion in the political arena overnight as Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok, who was set to take over the acting presidency following the resignation of Han Duck-soo, resigned after an impeachment motion was filed at the National Assembly. Education Minister Lee Joo-ho took the interim job as a result. Consumer prices remained in the 2% range in April for the fourth month in a row, but the cost of processed foods and of dining out were relatively high. It's May 2nd, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We begin with the latest on the upcoming presidential election with the clock ticking fast. Former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has made his presidential bid official, pledging for a major change in power structure. DP's presidential hopeful Lee Jae-myung continued campaigning today, and so did PPP's Kim Moon-soo and Han Dong-hoon ahead of the party convention tomorrow. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
Former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo officially announced his run for president on Friday morning, just one day after stepping down as acting president and prime minister.
I just can't accept that even trade and diplomacy, which are vital to our national interest, are being used for political fights. I've decided to find a way to contribute for the future of the Republic of Korea I love, and for all of us.
Han pledged immediate constitutional reform. He laid out a plan to draft an amendment in his first year in office, completed in the second, hold general and presidential elections in the third year under the new constitution, and then step down immediately. He also pledged to tackle trade issues including U.S. tariffs, as well as to work for national unity and support the vulnerable. Han's entry into the race is expected to shake up the People Power Party's primary, now in its final stage, as he is expected to form a coalition with the PPP's final candidate. The PPP will wrap up its two-day voting on Friday to choose the party's presidential candidate, with results based 50% on party members and 50% on a public opinion poll. Ahead of the party convention on Saturday, where the final candidate will be announced, Kim Moon-soo and Han Dong-hoon on Friday visited different regions to gather support. Kim focused on the Seoul metropolitan area, while Han visited Busan and Gyeongsang-namdo province. Meanwhile, despite the political fallout from the Supreme Court's decision on his election law violation case, Democratic Party presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung is sticking to his schedule. He visited Gangwon province to listen to the voices of the people. The Supreme Court on Thursday sent Lee's election law violation case back to the High Court with the intent of a guilty verdict. The DP's election committee on Friday criticized the ruling, calling it an unfair political decision. The National Assembly Legislation and Judiciary Committee, led by members of the DP, decided on Friday to initiate the review of a DP proposed amendment to the Criminal Procedure Act despite opposition from PPP members. The amendment aims to halt legal proceedings once a defendant is elected president. The DP plans to refer the bill to a plenary session next week. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Things dramatically unfolded overnight in the political arena, with the post of acting president going to Education Minister Lee Joo-ho. He started the job by holding a National Security Council meeting today. Oh Soo-young has the latest.
Stabilizing governance amid a political storm. South Korea's new acting president Lee Joo-ho took charge of the nation Friday, prioritizing people's livelihoods and national security as his first agenda. Deputy Prime Minister for Social Affairs Lee Joo-ho, as of midnight, became the country's unprecedented third interim leader in the aftermath of former President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment. This came after two back-to-back resignations on Thursday, as acting president and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo stepped down to run in the June 3rd presidential election, and his next in line, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok, quit within hours under the threat of impeachment by the National Assembly. Lee's first course of action, convening the National Security Council to ensure livelihoods and public safety remain intact, and for watertight readiness against potential provocations from North Korea.
Ensuring national security and the lives and safety of the people is the government's most fundamental duty. There must not be even the slightest gap in any area, whether in diplomacy, security, defense, or economic security.
The acting president also presided over a state council meeting to approve the 13.8 trillion won or $9.6 billion supplementary budget passed by Parliament to fund wildfire recovery, AI research and development, public welfare and infrastructure projects. Remarking on the fastest ever passing of extra budget seen in the last 2 decades, he stressed the interim government must not cease to address challenges affecting national interest, such as trade consultations with the United States, economic security, and global competition in key technologies like semiconductors and AI. Until the next government takes office next month, he requested all ministers fulfill their duties until the end, in the face of history. An economist globally renowned for education and innovation policy, the two-time education minister will run a caretaker government until a new president is elected. His responsibilities now span the country's presidency, the Prime Minister's office, and the Finance Ministry. With the Finance Minister's resignation, the cabinet is left with only 14 members, falling short of the 15 required to hold a State Council meeting. However, the Ministry of Government Legislation has ruled that the 15-member requirement refers to positions, not active individuals, and that with 11 or more attendees, the cabinet can lawfully function. Joseon Arirang News.
Local consumer prices continued to hover at the 2% range in April for the 4th month in a row, with the cost of processed foods and of dining out remaining relatively high. Park Jun-han covers the findings.
Inflation in South Korea persists despite low oil prices, spurred by high food and dining out costs. According to data from Statistics Korea on Friday, South Korea's inflation in April stood at 2.1% year-on-year. Consumer prices have been showing increases in the 2% range over the past 4 months. High exchange rates due to the weakening of the Korean won and supply constraints pushed up the prices of processed foods and the cost of dining out. Compared to April last year, prices of processed foods went up by 4.1%. This is the highest level of increase in 16 months. In the same period, the cost of dining out went up by 3.2%. This is the highest level of increase in 13 months. Declining global oil prices eased inflationary pressure as prices of petroleum products fell 1.7%, offsetting earlier gains. An expert from Statistics Korea pointed to the impact of the drop in global oil prices from around $89 per barrel in April last year to around $68 per barrel this April as a reason why further increases in consumer prices did not occur.
The fluctuations in consumer prices were due to a downward shift in petroleum products, due to a decline in global oil prices.
While the rise in the exchange rate contributed to April's inflation and falling global oil prices limited further increases in consumer prices, this data alone does not indicate a long-term economic trend.
Although it used to go up, the exchange rate is falling a lot at the moment. So I think the exchange rate problem will go away sooner or later. About the global oil price issue, oil prices have also dropped a lot recently, but they might go up again. So I don't think the inflation issue is stabilized yet.
Meanwhile, the prices of fresh produce fell by 1.9%, marking the largest drop since March 2022. Despite global uncertainties, an expert from Statistics Korea expects the country's inflation level to remain around 2% in the near future. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
Elsewhere, Washington and Kyiv have signed a mineral deal after a month of talks, which lays out a plan of partnership and cooperation. An Sung-jin covers the details.
After long negotiations, the United States and Ukraine have signed a mineral agreement. Kyiv released the final agreement on Thursday, which had been signed in Washington, D.C. the day before. Ukrainian President Zelensky said it was the first tangible outcome from his recent meeting with U.S. President Trump during the Pope's funeral last month.
The agreement has changed significantly during the preparation process. It is now truly an equitable agreement, one that creates opportunities for substantial investment in Ukraine.
This agreement comes after a heated meeting between the leaders in the Oval Office back in February, where Trump abruptly canceled a planned closed-door session, allegedly saying, "Come back when you're ready to talk about peace negotiations." But now this move signifies deeper cooperation between the two countries. The deal outlines joint investments in mineral resources, including rare earth minerals. This agreement, deemed as a strategic move for the U.S., gives a preferential stance to secure access to these elements as China restricts its rare mineral exports. In return, the U.S. will provide military and financial assistance to Ukraine through a reconstruction investment fund, though no concrete security guarantees have been made. One of the notable components from the joint statement is that it used the phrase "Russia's full-scale invasion," which may suggest the U.S.'s potential shift in its diplomatic stance, which had been previously leaning toward Russia.
Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. It's time for this cruel and senseless war to end.
Another detail is that the deal did not mention Ukraine's need to pay back the so-called debt of $350 billion of aid that Trump had previously demanded. Though the Kremlin hasn't officially spoken about the deal, some Russian politicians have denounced it by calling it Ukraine's step towards colonization or repaying of U.S. support with resources. For the deal to come into effect, it will need to be ratified by the Ukrainian parliament. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Friday means it's time for our Arts and Culture segment. Joining me is our culture correspondent, Song Yujin. Welcome back to the studio, Yujin.
It's great to be back, Jungmin.
What do you have for us today?
Well, last week I brought you the story of the historic Joseon Tongsinsa envoys and how their centuries-old mission is being recreated. That is them going to Japan. And this week I have the next chapter of that journey, this time from Busan, where the envoys once boarded ships and where a restored Tongsinsa vessel is now making a symbolic voyage to Japan. The final stop on Korean soil for the Joseon Tongsinsa, Korea's diplomatic missions to Japan during the 17th to 19th centuries, was the port city of Busan. After arriving from Seoul, hundreds of envoys boarded ships bound for Japan. Every year, this historic moment is revived through the Joseon Tongsinsa Festival. Dressed in traditional Korean attire, hundreds of participants marched through Busan, retracing the footsteps of the original envoys.
It's my first time participating, but it really made me reflect more deeply on Korea's relationship with Japan, such as the colonial era.
When I filled the form for this event, I did look it up, and it was a good historical piece that I got to know. Yeah.
And completing the recreation, the Tongsinsa ship has also been meticulously brought back to life. So this is a vessel that was modeled after the original Tongsinsa ship setting sail for Japan. By mid-May, it will arrive in its final destination, Osaka. This marks the first time in 261 years that the route to Osaka is being taken. The man behind this reconstruction is Hong Sun-jae, who has spent a decade bringing the historic vessel back to life. Since 2015, he has collected historical documents, studied ancient ship models, and traveled across the country to find the right timber. The ship launched in 2018, made its first voyage to Japan in 2023, and this year it's heading farther than ever before.
This year marks 60 years since South Korea and Japan normalized diplomatic ties. Our ship will hold an arrival ceremony in Osaka on May 13th, Korea Day at the Osaka World Expo. Through this journey, we hope to promote peace and remind people that our two countries share a long history of connection, not just conflict.
Having departed from Busan on April 28th, the ship will visit multiple ports in Japan, hosting exhibitions and performances, just as the Joseon Tongsinsa envoys did centuries ago to share Korean culture.
Eugene, you mentioned in your report how the Tongsinsa ship will host exhibitions and performances during its stay in Japan. Can you tell us more about how that'll work?
Sure. So I first want to mention that unlike the original Tongsinsa missions, this time the ship will only carry the 7 designated crew members. So what I mean by is, as for the performers who will be performing traditional Korean performances in Japan, they will travel separately and then they will join the ship at various ports based on the performance schedule. Now, curator Hong says he wanted to create an onboard museum. So talking about the exhibition, the team filled the ship's interior with pictures and props, really telling the story and the history of the Joseon Tongsinsa, such as how the ship was built. And I want to mention that a floating museum like this you're seeing on the screen is incredibly rare.
And that leads to my next question. So where can people in Japan stay the ship, enjoy the experiences, performances, and experience the exhibitions?
So according to the sailing schedule offered by the National Research Institute of Maritime Heritage, the ship is currently in Kaminoseki, Yamaguchi Prefecture. And tomorrow it's scheduled to sail to Kure, where the first major public events in Japan will take place on Monday, May 5th. And that day will feature a welcoming ceremony, the opening of the onboard exhibition, and also a series of traditional Korean performances. And from there, the ship will continue along the route that you are seeing on the screen right now. And after arriving in Osaka in mid-May, it will then retrace its path back to Korea and is expected to return to Busan on May 27th.
So as you've mentioned in both last week's and this week's reports, the ship's arrival in Osaka this year carries special significance.
Right.
It seems like there's a full lineup of events planned when it gets there.
Definitely. So May 13th, as mentioned in my report, is the big day. So in the morning, there will be a welcoming ceremony with the local residents of Osaka, and that will be followed by a marching procession like the one featured in my report, but that will take place on the grounds of the Osaka World Expo, which is currently taking place right now. And I want to mention that I'll be on site covering those events, so please stay tuned for that coverage as well.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Eugene, for the report.
Always a pleasure.
And here in the capital, Seoul, the city has turned into a place full of joy and excitement. Our Choi So-hyung brings you the spring edition of Seoul Festa, now one of the city's main festivals.
As K-pop music begins to play, visitors start dancing passionately to the rhythm. Seoul Plaza in front of the Seoul City Hall has been filled with people dancing happily to K-pop songs. At this year's Seoul Spring Festa, the K-pop random play dance event has drawn many foreign visitors who are eager to experience it in person.
We're here mainly for the play dance, where you dance, we've seen it a lot online, and we were really excited to come and see one that's actually happening in person since we got here.
And I'm also very excited for the random play dance. I've watched so many on YouTube.
Aside from the random play event, there's also the Haechi zone set up in one corner of the plaza to mark the first anniversary of Haechi becoming Seoul's official mascot. Families enjoyed taking photos and playing in a variety of fun booths.
I had fun making a cute hat with my grandma. It feels like we made a really sweet memory together.
I'm really thankful. It's been such a special day with my granddaughter in a beautiful place and perfect weather.
In the center of the plaza, the picnic zone was packed with people enjoying a relaxing spring day. There were also sweet music performances under the warm, clear spring sky with nice weather. Visitors laid out mats and watched. This year's Seoul Spring Festa kicked off last Wednesday, offering everyone in Seoul the chance to experience and enjoy a new kind of K-culture.
It's hard to define Seoul with just one word because the city has so many different charms. In fact, I believe its diversity and constant change are what makes Seoul truly special. Our festival reflects those qualities, providing different programs every day across various locations. For tourists, it's a great way to experience the essence of Seoul in a concentrated and vivid way.
During the festival, new events and shows are taking place across different parts of the capital, including here at Seoul Plaza, Gwanghwamun Square, and Deoksugung Palace.
This year's Seoul Spring Festa, full of trendy and exciting fun in the capital city Seoul, will run until Tuesday, May 6th. Joseon, Arirang News.
Starting Friday, about 260 museums and art galleries across the nation are holding 2025 Museum Week. But despite its name, Museum Week runs from May 2nd till May 31st, with discounted admissions and special events for visitors. The number of local museums participating this year has increased compared with last year. Private collections will also be displayed at 50 museums and art galleries nationwide, including Gyeonggi Province Museum and Gyeonggi Museum of Contemporary Ceramic Art. More details can be found on the official website that you see on the screen right now. The South Korean musical Maybe Happy Ending has been nominated for 10 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. The romantic musical, which made its Broadway debut last November, will compete for the top prize and has also been nominated in categories such as Best Performance by an Actor and Best Direction of a Musical. The 2025 Tony Awards, annually celebrating excellence in Broadway theater, will take place on June 8th at Radio City Music Hall in New York.
With the spring rain yesterday, the dryness of the air has also been greatly relieved. The daytime temperature in Seoul rose to 20 degrees Celsius and 22 degrees in Daegu, which was about 2 to 3 degrees lower than the usual temperatures for this time of year. Temperatures will even move down a bit with the rain tomorrow. During this extended weekend, frequent rain is forecast across the country. Rain will begin in the central parts of the country early tomorrow and gradually spread to the whole country. These rain clouds won't stay long and will slowly move away during the daytime. Tomorrow's Seoul and Daejeon will start off at 9 degrees, Busan at 13 degrees. Daily highs will rise up to 16 to 18 degrees nationwide, except for Jeju at 23 degrees. It will rain all over the country on Monday night and continue until Tuesday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. We will be back next Wednesday after holidays here in Korea. Have a great weekend.